So anyway, shelve that. I'll tell you a bit about the games and stuff, but I just wanted to get that out there.
Hi innovators, welcome to NetworkHer's first fireside chat. I'm your host, Rachel Beguim, and a little bit about NetworkHer is that we're an organization dedicated to helping high schoolers connect to industry professionals who are part of gender marginalized communities. So make sure to subscribe to continue to stay up to date on all of our fireside chats where we continue to interview some amazing people involved in the STEM fields. Social medias will all be linked in the description below, so make sure to go check those out and follow. In today's interview, we talked to Lindsey Tropf, founder and CEO of Immersed Games. Are interested in learning what it's like to run your own tech startup. Tune in and enjoy. Welcome, Lindsey, to NetworkHer's first official fireside chat. I'm Rachel.
Exciting.
So, Lindsey, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to your career and what led you there?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of an education tech startup called Immersed Games. So we build a video game that teaches middle school science right now. We do have, plans to expand in the future. And it's called Taito Online. So kind of my pathway to that was through being an educator. And I went to graduate school in school psychology, which is part of the field of education. And so I was working on a PhD there and doing a bunch of kind of research and thought I wanted to go into academia. But I wasn't really a fan. Academia, uh, uh, getting to kind of the applied practical stuff instead of the theory is generally not as much of a strength. It depends on the programs and the people and stuff, but things are also just really slow moving there. And I'd get in trouble for things like not being deferent enough to some of the professors. Or I literally got criticized once for being too direct and jovial. Apparently, that's a bad thing in my grad school world. So definitely didn't want to stay in grad school and go into academia after those experiences. Really was thinking that startups sounded like a lot more interesting and fun to do like fast work and get things done quickly. I had some experience. I was a wedding photographer during grad school. So I kind of got a little bit of experience of like what it was like to do a business and kind of do that side of things, which I think gave me the confidence to think like, okay, if I don't really like what's out there in the educational gaming field, don't want to go into academia, I'll just start a business and do it. And so I did. I didn't finish a dissertation, didn't get my PhD. Instead, I founded the company and started building the company. Overlapped for a bit, but kind of didn't quite finish the dissertation, went right into the company back in like 2015. I went full time on it back then. So yeah, that was kind of my weird pathway to entrepreneurship. I feel like most people go straight from undergrad because you don't really need a, higher grad degree working on a PhD for years to do this sort of thing. But your life kind of puts all these experiences together and you see where you go.
So, between your bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, did you ever did you have experience as an educator? Like, were you working in a school?
Yeah, only during that like trajectory. So while I was working on degrees, I had a whole semester during undergrad of student teaching. You're actually only supposed to student teach a little bit, but the teacher who's supervising me was terrible, so I ended up teaching his whole class for a whole semester, and he just gave me the keys and didn't show up. Was not legal. And then during graduate school as well, the whole time I was always in schools and did like a full year internship as well. I was full time in schools, functioning as a school psychologist too. In the process of working on that PhD. So my experience was not like full-time normal teacher or anything, but did have, probably 4,000 hours logged in schools during that process. So it definitely helps people when I have meetings as an entrepreneur now with schools, they can tell immediately that I'm an educator just by, the lingo and understanding. And I didn't realize how much there was of kind of needing to know that until other people joined my team and they could also, people could tell instantly how much they didn't know, Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that you probably see so many applications to your experience in education to the games. So can you tell a little bit about the games that you make and how they're used,
Yeah.
Implemented in education?
Yeah, but first, just to add one more comment to that. I would recommend anyone kind of watching this. I do think it's a good idea to get some work experience, like in between undergrad and grad school, unless you really, really know. I was astounded. My first semester in grad school, there's 13 of us in this cohort working on school psychology degrees, and we had a course taught by an active school psychologist. And basically, everyone was like, "What does your job look like?" And nobody really knew. And we had all just enrolled in this program, right? And so, like, I didn't understand the field well enough to even know like what the right program was. Once you get kind of high level with degrees like that, there's a ton of little things with slight differences. And like one person tried to explain the differences between two degrees to me, school psychology and educational psychology. But I literally couldn't understand because I didn't have enough background knowledge to understand how they were trying to explain to me they were different. They just sounded like the same thing after, hours of Googling. So anyway, shelve that. I'll tell you a bit about the games and stuff, but I just wanted to get that out there. It is great to get some like practical out there experience to really understand the field and kind of narrow down before you spend a bunch of time getting the wrong degree, which happens regularly in grad school. So in terms of what we build, I think you were just asking me to kind of describe that. I have a video game called Taito Online. And so students, essentially, it's a 3D game, but it's right in the web browser because schools won't install software. So we had to spend a lot of time getting that to work. And so you create a character and go into this game world where you do different kind of like active problem solving that we've set up. So for instance, you might come across someone who's like, "Oh no, an epidemic is spreading across the city. We need your help." And so we've linked that to a bunch of the science standards that your teachers want you to learn, but we're having you actually collect data, interview people, graph it out, build arguments, and do all the stuff, which also are skills you're supposed to be learning in school. It's not just supposed to be lecture-based these days. So we have a bunch of stuff like that you do that covers right now about a year and a half worth of content that we have. And so we're kind of building out more and more of that so that teachers can kind of use it at scale and be able to have something that they can pull from. And ideally, it makes it a little more like applied for you guys, because instead of like, okay, I just got taught Punnett squares with some, really weird contrived example. Cool, why do we even use this? It's like, oh, I'm actually using Punnett squares because I'm trying to solve a food crisis by figuring out how to increase crop yield. And this is actually how these would be used in the real world too.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely like felt that like a lot of my classes, especially like the higher level ones at my school, like are all just lecture based. And personally, like that's not how I learn. So that would
Not
this
how
would definitely
anyone
be
learns.
this would definitely be like this is so helpful, I'm sure. And the kids are
Yeah.
probably really benefiting from it. And
Yeah.
so I gotta ask, like, what is your favorite video game? Being a video game creator.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have as much time to play these days, but my favorite genre are MMORPGs. That's what I was really into. So lately, I've been playing Final Fantasy 14. I don't know how familiar you are with things, but it's probably the top MMO like MMORPG in the world right now as well. It's yeah, really nicely done.
What is your day-to-day like? Or
It
is there even
is,
a day-to-day because
yeah,
you are
yeah. I mean,
entrepreneur?
it's really varied depending on kind of what my main project is. But I will say I try to group my time into a few different buckets. So about half of it I consider like external and half is internal. So the external stuff is things like networking with people, having meetings that might be able to connect me with people, to meet investors or people who might be able to have partnerships or give us advice and things like that, or reaching out for maybe networking, PR, probably like doing press stuff and everything. So that's like part of the external stuff. And the other part of the external is like sales and marketing type of things, having sales meetings. I do have like a full-time salesperson, so I don't have to spend all my time on that anymore, although I still spend a lot of time supporting that. But I mean, for example, recently I decided I wanted to rebuild our website. We didn't have the money to go pay someone to go do it. So outside of meetings I had scheduled basically for like, 2 weeks, I'm just working on the website all the time. Generally, I'm having a lot more meetings or outreach right now. I'm working on investment. So outside of the scheduled meetings I have, which might be like with my team or things like that, I'm just doing a bunch of outreach, researching investors, submitting forms, finding out if I want to talk to X person, do I know someone that knows them? Can I track down a pathway to get an introduction? Because that's what it takes a lot of the times and things like that. Or they're like, we want a 1-minute video of you talking about the product. Oh, my current one is a minute and a half. So now I have to go edit that. So anyway, that's current irritations. So a lot of my time spent on that. The internal stuff with my team is stuff like supporting the team, planning events, just have gifts coming in for them right now, keeping everyone happy in the company, setting up performance reviews because that actually helps people be happy to be like on track, know they're progressing in their careers. I don't get to work on the product that much anymore because I'm so busy with all the business stuff. So I have like once a week 1 hour meetings with my game design team, and every other week hour meetings to plan out the product roadmap or things like that, an hour meeting with the sales team. So like a lot of it is meetings to kind of like give people high level feedback and strategy, and a lot of that's because I'm the only one that talks to all the teams. I feel like at some point I could replace myself in that with someone who just also talks to every team and knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
That did. Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
meetings and then fill in the rest with whatever work project I've kind of elevated at that moment.
So, like when you were going through school, did you also feel that there was a a bridge, like what essentially Immersed Games trying to do is like create that like bridge between like actually getting to knowledge and like application? Like, so like, is there like, are there any experiences like in school that like led you to like want to design something that would help like students and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And sorry, I think something went a little odd with my audio. Does it still sound normal to you?
Yeah.
Okay. It has like touch controls. I probably just swiped something, but that's okay. I'll just deal with it sounding a little weird from my side. So, I think like the application side comes very naturally to me. Like for instance, if I'm listening to something and taking notes, I generally in my notes like actually write down application ideas just as I'm learning it, like highlight them color coded. Like it's and so in school I was like the kid who, I don't say kid, like teenager who would get like frustrated because like we'd be given a reading and I would get so excited and into it and like intrigued by some topic. And then we'd come in and like nobody else gave a shit, right? Oh, am I allowed? Anyway, okay, I'm going to use some bad words. And everything. And so I remember frustration. And even in high school, like nobody else in the class got like actually like, so I just am someone who's just like naturally very intellectually curious in that way. But I did recognize at the same time that like with my gaming, like I kind of even in high school and into college was like a leader in a gaming sense. We had like a guild that was like the second on the server in World of Warcraft for doing raids and stuff like that, and I led part of the raids and organized them. And in those days you had to have 40 people show up at the same time like multiple times a week and like organize these groups with the right composition of people to like beat these bosses and figure out strategies. And it was really that experience that, and other people have written about this too, that like really kind of stands in like stark contrast to what you get to do in school, right? Like in terms of empowerment and like strategy and problem solving and these things, collaboration, like it's so much richer than what you often get into school. So I mean, I'm not the only one, in like an education field who is like, wow, this is actually what we want learning to look like, right? And so I decided to do my dissertation on game-based learning for my PhD. And then I didn't really see any game-based learning look like that. I kind of thought it would, right? Because there's all these academic papers talking about that and books that have been around for 2 decades, more, talking about how amazing this learning from video games is and how we should use it for learning. But then people hadn't really pulled it off. And so that's what really like made me want to go do it.
Definitely. I'm like very fortunate where my school like has this program that is like your humanities are discussion based. And I found out like
That's great.
that is so much more of like a fulfilling class period. And like I actually like everyone in the room gets into the work and everyone in
Right.
the room like did the reading and all that. So
Yeah.
and it's
That's
just
cool.
like it makes me sad that like I'm one of like the only ones who gets to experience it like in my district because it's exclusive to our school and they have a cap at 50 people across 3 grade levels.
And it's probably
So
all the most advanced students, I assume, who
yeah.
are okay. Yeah, I just when I went through my education program too, they would talk about like, oh, things that like gifted kids need, and I would annoy my professor by raising my hand and going, but that benefits everyone. But that benefits everyone,
Exactly. Yes.
like the disengaging, boring types of learning, like are also going to disengage and bore your at-risk students. And if they get to do these more interesting things, they are going to get bought into. It's kind of like us admitting failure that we just can't do good teaching at scale, right? To only give
Yeah,
that to the like advanced students or a select group of 3 classes or something like that. It's like
exactly.
we don't
Yeah.
have the capability to do this at scale for all students. And it's true, but really frustrating. And it's why you need some tool sets that we hope that like tools like ours can say, like, okay, a teacher who maybe doesn't have the capacity to do that type of planning normally can use our resources. And then, we've created kind of materials that go with it to try to make that easier. Like, okay, after you did the first class, here's an observe, wonder, learn board or a Padlet you can use in their class to try to have some discussion about it. And so we've like tried to build these in to make it simple and like push people towards the right learning. But I mean, sometimes schools don't adopt us because the teachers want to lecture and use textbooks, frankly. Like, and we're like, this is a pretty easy way for you to break out of that. And that's why some people have used us. Like some teachers even said, like, oh wow, this can help me stop being like that. But it's a big ask to change how someone teaches.
Yeah. I mean, because also like I'm very like I got very involved in coding at my school. And I remember when they first teaching us, they had these like games, but they weren't like interactive. They're like, here's a picture, make it move that way, which is helpful like when you're first
Yeah.
learning. But like there's never that aspect of like like there's not really an opportunity to get like super, super into it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's challenging because that gets really complex on the coding
True.
side.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
understand
mean,
why too. Yeah.
yeah, but like in the beginning,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, move this boy forward, move him left.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there's some cool things coming out to help with that. VidCode's a kind of cool tool if you've heard of that before, where you can like add filters and like code how you want things to look with like videos. And then there's something else coming out soon. I'd have to look it up. My person that works with me from the National Science Foundation just told me about it recently, but I haven't played with it too much. What did he say? JoyLab, something called Game Bender that's going to launch soon that's supposed to help people like think it'll be a little more interesting because it's not just build a game from scratch, which you can't really do much interesting things with that. It's like remix and add glitches and, manipulate existing games, which maybe can let you do some more fun things as well.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely keep an eye out for that. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing. Um, so just a couple questions left. What are some current goals like either Immerse Games have or just you have at your job?
Yeah. I mean, right now, a lot of it's kind of around the boring sales and money side. So I'm raising money for investors right now. And so I, need to raise like $1 million in order to be able to last another year and a half or so and do sales and try to get the company to be more financially sustainable to hire some like sales and marketing team members and things like that. So a lot of our goals right now are around that. That I'm working on fundraising. I'm trying to get some partnerships to launch some free content. Right now, it's just a free trial and you have to pay for our product. So we actually want to go freemium, not with microtransactions, but with some free content.
Yeah.
And so trying to find some partners that will work with us that are kind of more well known that can kind of help us get the word out a little bit better to make some cool content. So that's some of the other outreach and like pitches I'm working on and stuff. When I get off this call, I'll be going back to working on trying to convince someone I really want to work with us and making them a custom video to about what I think will make them excited to work with me and stuff. So, and then, yeah, on the product side, we have a grant with the National Science Foundation. So we're working on kind of a new type of content into our game that has like a live simulation where something is going wrong and you work actually with a group to collect data and graph it out, try to figure out what's going on, and then actually try to implement engineering solutions to fix it. So yeah, and we have like an authoring tool that we're making so that we should be able to like manipulate and make these kind of relatively quickly. So our hope is to also make it more interdisciplinary in that case. So if your teacher just finished something with ecology, maybe we have like 4 or 5 options of some cool simulations that use ecology plus genetics or ecology plus some earth science, and they can kind of pick the one that they know, oh, you guys know this stuff, and actually give you stuff that's a little more interdisciplinary and lets you like do these really cool like 3-day projects that kind of pull your learning together and can be used for assessment.
That sounds so amazing. Now I'm excited and I'm like
Thanks. Yeah, it'll
cool.
be in beta next school year. We'll have some of our teachers get to opt in and start messing with it and stuff. So, yeah, that's one of the things that the team's working on. But yeah, a lot that we're working on. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have one more question. So what advice would you give someone who is interested in working into similar fields or breaking into a similar field?
Yeah, well, I guess which field, like being a founder and tech startups or like educational gaming education, like
Let's
yeah.
go with like a tech startup.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of different areas that you can approach it. I think most people kind of think of tech startups more from like the coding side. And, people when I meet them all the time just say like, oh, so you made the game. I'm like, yeah, they're like, oh, you're a coder. And I'm like, no, because there's actually like a gazillion different roles. We have a user experience designer who comes up with all the interactions and researches and studies that. And it's a really interesting blend of like science and art called a UX designer. There's obviously programmers, but they come from a bunch of different backgrounds and do different specialties and stuff like that. It's people who have to manage and help organize stuff, other, content creators, developers, sales and marketing. So there's just so many different areas you can go from it. So I think you can kind of enter like the tech startup field from any angle you want. If you're kind of joining something and getting that experience. This small companies are fun to work for because we make you be a lot more diversified in the type of things you do. Right. So like if you're at a really big company, your job might be answering support tickets via email all day. And that is it. Because once you get really big and you have hundreds or thousands of people working, you want everyone to specialize. So they're really good at something. And a startup where you have, 5 to 15 people on a team, my customer success person who answers those email support tickets is also doing live chat and phone calls and setting up meetings and doing marketing outreach and helping with the website and building content. And, she is helping with the sales team and stuff like that. So I think going into startups is really cool because you get that really interesting broad experience and can kind of maybe pick something to specialize in later. But just kind of depends. Do you like ambiguous, self-directed jobs where no one's going to really train you very well, or does that really stress you out, the idea that you're going to do that? And then if you want to actually found something, my main advice would just be to get familiar with an industry or a problem first, because there's a lot of just really crappy, pointless startup stuff because it's a bunch of people in college who have no life experience and don't really know of any problems, who are just like, here's a cool idea, but it doesn't necessarily fit. Or like in the education industry, a lot of times engineers who don't really know the education industry, see something with their kids and think like, oh, I'm going to fix that, but they don't really understand the field and what's needed enough, and they don't end up making something that's actually needed by the people in that field. So but that's more on the startup founder side, just my personal peeve.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.